Sometimes the line between life and death isn't as certain as we believe. In this video, we dive into real stories of people who were mourned, buried, and even prayed for, only to wake up and leave everyone stunned. From medical mistakes to chilling twists, every moment will leave you questioning how close we truly are to the unknown. These aren't Reddit tales, they happened in actual life, so stay tuned because what you're about to hear and see breaks every expectation. Number 15. Zhang Diang Funeral Wake-Up. Most people never see their own funeral, but Zhang Diang from China decided not to leave it to chance. His story wasn't just odd, it was emotional. In many Chinese traditions, honoring the dead doesn't end at burial. In China, graves are visited, cared for, and remembered. Zhang, who is 66, began wondering who would actually show up when he's gone. So he faked his death and organized a full funeral while still alive. He invited 40 people, but when the day arrived, hundreds turned up, except 20 close friends and relatives who didn't bother to show up. That hit pretty hard. "I can't believe so many didn't care," he reportedly said. But now, since he was alive, he had the rare chance to confront them. His message was clear: don't wait for someone to die to show you care. Zhang's funeral wasn't a joke or a prank, it was a wake-up call. Not for laughs, but for truth, and he made sure everyone got the message very clear. Number 14. Walter Williams. For most people, death is final. There are no second or third chances. But for 78-year-old Walter Williams of Lexington, Mississippi, it was more of a technical error. After collapsing at home with no pulse and no signs of life, paramedics pronounced him dead. The coroner made it official. He was zipped into a body bag, hauled to a funeral home, and prepped for embalming. That's when things got weird. As the embalmer reached for his tools, Walter's legs moved. Then they twitched again. Then he started breathing. Walter Williams was alive. Not just barely, he was breathing, moving, and somehow fine. He'd gone through every stage of post-death protocol without anyone noticing he wasn't actually gone. His family called it a miracle. His nephew even joked, "I think he's gone for real this time." When Walter passed away 2 weeks later, his story raises the question how many people are buried alive just because no one double-checks. Walter's pause is a brutal reminder. Even death can get misfiled. Well, this is crazy, I mean. Number 13. Hamdi Hafez El-Nubi. Sometimes, second chances show up when no one's expecting them. Back in 2012, 28-year-old Hamdi Hafez Al-Nubi from Egypt was pronounced dead after a sudden heart attack. The news devastated his family. As per Islamic customs, they bathed him, wrapped his body, and began preparations for the funeral. Just before burial, the body was sent to the medical examiner for final paperwork. That's when something didn't add up. The examiner noticed his body was still warm, unusual for someone declared dead hours earlier. Taking a closer look, they discovered the impossible. Hamdi was alive, barely, but undeniably breathing. Within moments, the entire funeral transformed. The grief turned into celebration. The mourners burst into joy. Hamdi was rushed back for medical care, and he survived. His case remains one of the rarest declared dead, prepared for burial, and saved at the last possible second. It reminds us that even the most final moments can flip, and life, sometimes, isn't quite finished speaking. Number 12. Nicephorus Glickus. Well, this story is all in one, strange, unsettling, and just a little bit hilarious. In 1896, Greece, Bishop Nicephorus Glickus, who was a very well-known figure, was thought to have died. The church prepared everything with solemn care. His body was displayed for 2 days while mourners wept, prayed, and paid their respects. Then, in the middle of the final service, it happened. The bishop sat up. Just like that, he opened his eyes, looked around, and asked what everyone was doing. Imagine standing there crying, then watching the dead man wake up like it was just a long nap. Panic, screams, probably someone is fainting. Turns out, he wasn't dead, just in an incredibly deep sleep. Whether it was some rare coma, a misdiagnosis, or just a 19th century medical blunder, no one really knows. But the bishop's resurrection left a mark. One moment, he was the guest of honor. The next, he was sitting up, asking questions. Sometimes, even the most sacred moments can turn into something bizarre. Number 11. Fajl Mukametsianov. Imagine standing at a funeral, grieving, only for the person in the coffin to suddenly move. That's what happened in the case of Fajl, a Russian woman who was mistakenly declared dead in 2011 after suffering a heart attack. Doctors examined her, saw no signs of life, and pronounced her gone. A few days later, the funeral took place. Family, friends, all in mourning. But as they gathered around her coffin, something unimaginable happened. Fajl opened her eyes. Then she screamed. Panic erupted. People backed away in horror. Her body had been prepped, her coffin sealed, and yet she was alive. She was rushed back to the hospital in critical condition. Tragically, she only survived for 12 more minutes before dying again, this time for real. Her story raises a chilling question. Even with modern medicine, how many times have we been wrong? Fajl's brief return is a reminder that even the final chapter isn't always the last one. Number 10. Gilberto Araujo. Gilberto gave his family the shock of their lives at his own funeral. A tragic attack at a local Brazilian car wash left one man dead, his body mangled beyond recognition. When Gilberto's brother arrived, he saw the corpse and was convinced it was him. No hesitation, no verification, the funeral was arranged. Family showed up in black, crying, mourning the man they thought was gone. That's when the front door creaked open and in walked Gilberto, very much alive, very much confused. He had no idea why everyone was grieving or why his own death was being discussed like a rumor. Turns out the victim at the car wash only looked like him, close enough that even his brother couldn't tell the difference. In grief, people stopped thinking clearly. In this case, one misidentification turned into a full-blown funeral for someone still walking around. It's a messed up lesson. Always double-check your facts, especially when they're 6 feet deep. Number 9. Noella Rukundo. Her story sounds like a crime thriller, but it's all real. While attending her stepmother's funeral in Burundi, Noella was kidnapped by a group of men. They blindfolded her and shoved her into a car. But these weren't random attackers. They were hitmen hired by her own husband, Balenga Kalala. He orchestrated the entire plot from Australia. The killers, however, had second thoughts. They confessed everything to Noella and released her. Instead of hiding, she flew back home and walked into her own funeral. Her husband was there, grieving publicly, unaware of what was coming. Then Noella walked in, alive. The crowd froze. She confronted him in front of everyone. Kalala was arrested and sentenced to 9 years for attempted murder. Their marriage was over. Noella's story is one of survival and justice. She didn't vanish. She showed up, looked death and betrayal in the face, and made sure the truth came out on her terms. Number 8. Watson Franklin Mandujano Dorotio. Watson Franklin from Peru went through one of the most disturbing ordeals imaginable, pronounced dead twice in the same day. It started with tooth pain. Seeking relief, he visited a dentist for a root canal. But soon after the procedure, his health spiraled. Fever, chills, weakness. Instead of proper treatment, he was given diazepam, leaving him heavily sedated. His condition deteriorated. Doctors declared him dead, heartbroken. His family prepared for his funeral. As they gathered to say farewell, someone noticed something terrifying. His ribs were rising and falling. Watson was breathing. Rushed from the coffin, he was taken back to the hospital. But fate dealt another cruel blow. After briefly showing signs of life, he was once again declared dead. The error was devastating. His story highlights how fragile medical judgment can be, especially when exhaustion, overwork, and quick decisions cloud accuracy. For Watson Franklin, a simple dental visit became a nightmare, one that ended in tragedy and disbelief. Number 7. 3-year-old girl. In a small Philippine village, a funeral turned into chaos when a 3-year-old girl suddenly showed signs of life. Everyone believed she had died after suffering a high fever. Her family prepared the coffin, mourners gathered, and grief weighed heavy. Just as they were about to close the lid, a neighbor leaned in to adjust her position. Then something unbelievable happened. The child's head twitched. At first, it seemed like imagination, but then, slowly, her eyes opened. Gasps filled the room. Relatives rushed her to the hospital, where doctors confirmed she was alive and stable. The family, overwhelmed with relief, clung to hope. But the miracle was short-lived. Days later, she passed away again, this time without revival. The heartbreaking cycle of hope and loss left the community shaken. To make matters even more unsettling, at another funeral nearby, witnesses recorded a body suddenly sitting upright. Real or staged, it fueled debate, proof that life and death don't always follow rules. Number 6. Muhammad Furkan. In 2019, a shocking scene unfolded in Lucknow, India. Furkan, only 20 years old, had suffered a serious accident. Doctors checked him thoroughly, saw no pulse, no movement, and declared him dead. His devastated family brought him home for funeral rites. The atmosphere was heavy with grief as relatives gathered. Prayers filled the room, and preparations for burial began. Then, just before the coffin was sealed, someone noticed his body twitch. At first, they dismissed it as a muscle spasm. But then his eyes slowly opened. Chaos erupted. Some gasped, others cried, and many recoiled in disbelief. His relatives, stunned and terrified, quickly called an ambulance. Muhammad was rushed back to the hospital, where doctors finally realized the mistake. He was alive, breathing on his own, and clinging to life. The emotional swing was brutal: sorrow, horror, shock, and then overwhelming joy. Declared dead, brought home, and nearly buried, Muhammad's Furkan story proves how thin the line between life and death really is. Number 6. Edison Vicuna. There's a time and place for everything, but showing up drunk to your own funeral? That's a new one. Edison Vicuna from Ecuador vanished without a trace. After days of silence, a body was discovered badly disfigured from a brutal car crash. The family identified it as Edison without any questions. A funeral was arranged, mourners gathered, grief hung heavy, and memories were shared. Then Edison stumbled in, intoxicated, disoriented, and very much alive. The room turned to chaos. Gasps, screaming, cups dropped to the ground. People froze. Some thought they were seeing a ghost, but it was Edison, confused as ever, trying to understand why everyone looked horrified. Turns out, the body wasn't his. The car crash victim had been misidentified due to the extent of the injuries. The real dead man is still unknown. And ironically, Edison's drunken arrival was the only proof that he wasn't the one in the coffin. Strange how life sometimes makes its point, loud, messy, and unexpected. Number 4. When Death Lies. In South Africa, during what began as an ordinary church service, something extraordinary shocked an entire congregation. Pastor Alf Lukau was leading prayers over the body of a man who had reportedly died in his wife's arms. The casket had been delivered straight from the morgue, and the family was preparing for farewell. Then, in front of everyone, the impossible occurred. The man sat upright in his coffin, eyes wide, mouth open, as if jolted back to life. Screams, gasps, and disbelief erupted across the church. Some called it a miracle, others muttered about trickery. Within hours, videos of the moment spread worldwide, sparking heated debates. Was this divine intervention, clever staging, or something stranger? While skeptics insisted it was a hoax, many attendees swore they witnessed the unexplainable. The controversy still lingers. Regardless of belief, the sheer shock on the faces of those present proved one thing: when it comes to life and death, certainty can vanish in an instant. Number 3. Carlos Camello. Carlos Camello's story from Venezuela in 2007 is one of the most chilling medical mishaps imaginable. After a brutal traffic accident, the 33-year-old was declared dead at the scene. His body was taken to the morgue, paperwork completed, and doctors began the autopsy. As the first incision was made on his face, something shocking happened. Fresh blood started flowing. That kind of bleeding only occurs when the heart is still beating. Doctors froze, realizing Carlos wasn't dead. Moments later, he screamed from the pain, waking up mid-autopsy. Imagine opening your eyes, groggy and disoriented, only to find yourself on a steel table with surgical instruments at your skin. At the same time, his wife arrived at the morgue to identify the body, only to find Carlos sitting upright, alive, shaken, but breathing. Mistaken pronouncements of death are rare, but they do happen, especially in extreme trauma cases. For Carlos, life literally returned with a cut and a terrifying scar. What's your thoughts on this? Let us know. Number 2. Zach Clements. 17-year-old Zach collapsed during gym class without warning. His heart stopped, and for 20 minutes he had no pulse. Doctors worked frantically, nearly ready to pronounce him gone. Then, against all odds, his heart restarted. What makes Zach's story different isn't only his survival, but what he says happened while he was gone. According to him, he saw a man with long hair and a beard, Jesus himself. Zach insists it wasn't a dream or hallucination, but an encounter so vivid it changed him forever. He recalls being told it wasn't his time yet. Medical science explains near-death experiences as brain activity or chemical surges, but 20 minutes is unusually long for the brain to remain functional without damage. Zach recovered fully, without lasting harm. For some, his account is proof of faith. For others, it's an unsolved medical mystery. Number 1. Death becomes a holiday. This isn't a ghost story. It's a celebration of life in the most bizarre way possible. The tale of Matthew Wall from the village of Brogging in Hertfordshire, England, has lived for centuries for good reason. In 1571, Matthew, a local farmer, was believed to be dead. His family and neighbors gathered, mourning what they thought was a tragic goodbye. The casket was prepared, and the procession began. But as the pallbearers carried his coffin down the winding road, one of them slipped. The casket hit the ground. It flung open. Out rolled Matthew, very much alive, confused, and breathing. Right there in the middle of his own funeral, he woke up. Instead of whispers, the village embraced the moment. They turned it into a holiday. Every year on October 2nd, they sweep the roads and ring the bells, not in sorrow but in celebration. Matthew lived another 24 years, and to this day, Brogging still honors the man who literally rose up. We really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you soon in the next one.